Welcome to the October 14th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast, where we cover the biggest stories on Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrency every single day. You can count on us being here. This is your host, Space Marine, live from space. Jumping right into the market analysis, it's really interesting what's going on in the market. On Bitfinex, the price of Bitcoin surged all the way over $7,700. However, it only went up to $6,700 on Bitstamp and Coinbase. So there was a bit of a Bitcoin rally. It was sitting around $6,300 before this surge, and then it went up to actually $6,200 on Bitstamp and Coinbase. So it was around $6,200 on the global exchanges and went to $6,700, $500 increase. Pretty decent rally. And now it's relaxed a bit. On Bitstamp it's near $7,000, and on Bitstamp and Coinbase it's near $6,400. So one thing I want to mention right off the bat is the price on Bitfinex is way above the global market price. There's a massive premium, and this is going to be our first story we're going to go into. So we already talked about on some past shows how Bitfinex was having banking problems. Like first in 2017, Wells Fargo cut off its bank account, and then Bitfinex actually moved from Taiwan to the Caribbean and got the Noble Bank of Puerto Rico, and then they severed ties with the Noble Bank of Puerto Rico. That was really recently, in the past month. And then it was found that they were using a private account under the name Global Trading Solutions at HSBC, and HSBC is a massive bank based out of London. And then Bitfinex halted all fiat deposits in any fiat currency. So there was no more fiat deposits, but they were saying fiat withdrawals are working. And they're still saying that. I'll just go ahead and say what Bitfinex said today. Bitfinex released a statement today, and there's been a lot of uncertainty, but they released a big statement saying fiat withdrawals are all working, and fiat deposits are going to be working by tomorrow. Well, at least by the 16th. So, on subreddit of Bitfinex, so Reddit's like a place where a lot of crypto people talk, and on the Bitfinex subreddit, they're saying, a lot of people are saying the withdrawals are not working, they're even saying the site's not working at times, but a lot of people are definitely saying the withdrawals are not working. And then, just to put that in perspective, I just talked about the Bitcoin price premium. This happened when Mt. Gox collapsed. Mt. Gox was the biggest Bitcoin exchange in the world in the early days of Bitcoin, for USD at least. Actually, in general, it was the biggest Bitcoin exchange in the world. But then, when it started collapsing, like they could no longer have withdrawals, people traded into Bitcoin as fast as they could and pulled it out as fast as they could to get their money off of the exchange, and they were willing to pay a really sharp premium on Mt. Gox for that. And now the same thing's happening on Bitfinex. Right now the premium is 8%. It was as high as 15% earlier today. And it doesn't make sense why anyone would buy their Bitcoin on Bitfinex if there's such a premium when they could just buy it on Coinbase or Bitstamp or anywhere else. It's because they're trying to get their money off, and they're willing to pay a premium to get some of their money back, and they're willing to take a significant loss. So that indicates withdrawals aren't working on a large scale on Bitfinex, despite Bitfinex saying withdrawals are working. And I think of Baghdad Bob. So Baghdad Bob was during the Iraq War. He was like the spokesman for Iraq. And he said that American tanks are not in Baghdad. But then there were sounds of tanks rumbling. The roof was like shaking. There was like dust dropping. There was explosions. You could hear the American troops approaching. But he's saying, no, there's no American troops in Baghdad. So it's like Baghdad Bob. It looks like what Bitfinex is doing right now. Bitfinex is saying withdrawals are working. Deposits will be working by the 16th. Hopefully this isn't an exit scam. I don't even want to speculate about that, but this could just be buying time, and I really don't want to speculate about that. That remains to be seen. Hopefully Bitfinex is still working. Bitfinex is the largest USD exchange in the world for Bitcoin. So this is majorly bad news that Bitfinex is going down. There's another side to this story. The Tether stablecoin, which is run by Bitfinex, is also having some serious problems. Tether is supposed to be at parity with the US dollar. It's called the USDT. It's supposed to be worth $1, and that's because Tether's supposed to be redeemable through Tether Limited, which runs Tether, and Tether Limited is directly, intimately linked with Bitfinex. And so usually people can take their Tether and redeem it for $1 out of Tether's bank account, because every Tether is supposed to be backed by $1. Well, here's what's happening. $320 million of Tether. There's $2.8 billion total of Tether Max before this. And there could be an unlimited amount of Tether, basically. It's just like, if people want to buy a bunch of Tether, Tether Limited issues new USDT. But $320 million of USDT was removed from circulation, indicating it was redeemed. But then, the price of USDT started collapsing today. The price of USDT went from $1 to 92.5 cents. And that is a massive, massive problem for a stablecoin. It's supposed to be stable at parity with the US dollar, and it's not stable anymore. It's fluctuating a lot. It's below $1 still. Right now, I looked, it was 95 cents. So it crashed to 92.5 cents. It's still, now it's at 95 cents, which is still really bad. And that removed $80 million from the market cap, and that $80 million should not be removed. That's like a horrible for a stablecoin. That hurts the reputation of that stablecoin forever. So Tether's reputation has been permanently damaged. And there's a bunch of other stablecoins like from Gemini and other companies. So like they'll probably take place of Tether long term after this huge blow to Tether's reputation. But why is this happening? Why would anyone sell Tether for below $1? Well, I think the $320 million that was removed from circulation, which was probably taken out of Tether's bank account, like big investors probably accumulated some Tether and took it to Tether for redemption. But then after $320 million of redemption, maybe they shut down the redemption process temporarily at least. So now it's no longer backed by dollars effectively. I'm speculating that, but it doesn't make sense any other way why this would happen unless that's true. So the price of Tether has crashed to 7.5% below where it should be, and it should never go even like more than 1% below. It was always at $1 when it was healthy. It recently was actually trading at 99 cents for a little while, and now it's really crashed. So since Tether is linked with Bitfinex, they have the same banking issues. So perhaps Tether's bank accounts just aren't working anymore today. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe Tether will be okay in the future. But right now it appears there's a run on Tether, and people are just selling their Tether at a huge loss. Like an $80 billion loss overall across the market, which is a tremendous amount of money. So they're selling Tether at a huge loss just to get rid of it, because no one, like the reputation and faith in Tether is definitely being hurt massively right now, and people are probably just going to dump it just to get some of their money, like 90% of their money, instead of losing 100%, because that fear is in the market. And this is just starting. This situation will probably evolve. It just started in the past day. The collapse of Tether's price. Maybe it won't continue, but I think it probably will. Like, people are getting scared. Bitfinex is having these huge Bitcoin premiums, indicating withdrawals aren't working. People on subreddit are saying withdrawals aren't working. Meanwhile, Bitfinex isn't even mentioning that stuff. Bitfinex is not acknowledging what is happening, so that makes it all the worse. So we'll continue following this on BitcoinNews.com, because this would be the biggest exchange collapse since like Mt. Gox, if it actually is an exchange collapse. Hopefully it is not. That would be really bad news for the Bitcoin market to have the biggest USD exchange go down in this day and age. Now for our next story. An Easter egg was found in Bitcoin's original code. And what an Easter egg is, it's like a hidden thing, like in video games, but it could also be in code. So Satoshi Nakamoto wrote the original Bitcoin code in 2008. So this Easter egg is from 10 years ago. Someone found this in the original code from 2008. And in the Genesis block of Bitcoin, this was kind of an Easter egg, but this was found immediately. In the Genesis block, it reads, "The Times, January 3rd, 2009. Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout for banks." That's become a famous message because it's in the Genesis block of Bitcoin. And it also indicates a motivation for Bitcoin's creation. Basically, Bitcoin was created in 2009, and also actually 2008, right when the Great Recession of 2008 happened. And the Great Recession involved massive amounts of banks collapsing. It involved corporations collapsing, and then ultimately the biggest banks and corporations were bailed out with trillions of US dollars of bailouts. And what ultimately happened is, so the average citizens were already massively hurt by the Great Recession right when it happened. They lost their retirements and their investments. But then, the governments printed trillions of dollars to bail out the banks and corporations that caused the Great Recession with their immoral investment practices with like subprime mortgages and such. So not only did people lose their investments, the value of currency went down because trillions of US dollars were printed worldwide. And then there was lots of fiat inflation. So not only did people lose their retirements and their investments, the money in their pocket lost value too. And so this indicated a really centralized and messed up system that we have. And so that's when Satoshi developed Bitcoin. That's probably the reason that he finally did it at that time in 2008 and 2009. So he included that message, "The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks." The first bailout didn't work. They were on the second bailout, and there was many bailouts. They're still bailing out. Once they started bailing out, they didn't stop. It's been going on to this day, the massive amount of money printing and basically bailing out to this day. So, in the code, there's pseudocode. So pseudocode's kind of like how the code's going to work. So in Satoshi's code, he has pseudocode, and then the code that actually makes it work. So in the pseudocode, there's a string, and it says transaction new.vin 0.script seg equals, and it looks like a parameter. And then it's a 0x736, and then there's a long hexadecimal string. So this long hexadecimal string, there's multiple layers of encryption to this. First off, someone would have to know to take that 0x off the front, and then they have a hexadecimal string. You unencrypt the hexadecimal string, and then it reads backwards that same message, the times January 3rd, 2009 chance on the brink of the second ballot for banks. So it's in a hexadecimal, there's some added characters to it, and then it reads backwards. So there's multiple layers of encryption, kind of like with Bitcoin. But then it's the same message. So this is quite an Easter egg, and it was found in the original code from 2008. So that's really interesting. And it brings up the possibility that there's even more Easter eggs in Bitcoin's code hidden by Satoshi 10 years ago. So that's going to be really interesting to see if anyone finds any more. So, on to our next story. Ethereum development community has been focusing on the Constantinople hard fork. And I think it's been really interesting because this is causing a divide in the community, Constantinople hard fork. Because they're saying they're going to lower the mining reward from 3 Ethereum to 2 Ethereum. By the way, Ethereum's prices collapsed from over $1,000 in 2018 to below $200. So, and they're lowering the mining reward. So miners are already really struggling. Lots of miners have gone out of business. There's tons of mining rigs for Ethereum on sites like OfferUp and LetGo, where people are just pawning and liquidating their rigs to other people. And then they're going to lower the mining reward as the miners are struggling. So, just like Constantinople was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Eastern Roman Empire represents how the Western and Eastern Roman Empire, the Roman Empire were divided into East and West, and the Eastern Roman Empire was Constantinople. So it's interesting they named their fork Constantinople because it's causing a divide in the Ethereum community just like the divide of Rome. And I think in the current situation as it is, if they did the Constantinople hard fork today successfully, it might actually cause like a new version of Ethereum to split off because the miners would just keep the version where there's 3 Ethereum per block instead of 2 Ethereum. The miners are in control of Ethereum's network as it is now, and if they don't like an upgrade on a majority scale, then they wouldn't adopt it, and there'd be a new version of Ethereum. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's definitely controversy and fighting in the Ethereum community that could cause that. So anyways, they launched the Ethereum Constantinople hard fork on the Ropsten testnet. So Ethereum has multiple testnets, and they're actually pretty important for development purposes, so people could test their things before wasting money on gas and clogging up the network with bad creations. They test it on testnets. Ropsten's one of the testnets. So at block 4.23 million on the Ropsten Ethereum testnet on October 13th, they launched the Constantinople hard fork, and it completely stalled. It didn't even mind. It mined a block after 2 hours, and there was no transactions in the block. It appears the testnet has proceeded after that point, and it might be the Constantinople hard fork, but there were serious problems, and the developers had to jump in to fix it, to make it work. If it's even working, maybe they just went back to the original version, and that's not really certain. There's not much news about this. So, but one piece of direct news is from Afri Shodan, which is a Ethereum developer. He's well known. He says, no Constantinople in 2018, we have to investigate. And so he's basically saying since it failed on the testnet so spectacularly, there's going to be no hard fork for Ethereum in 2018. It might actually be good news for the miners and also all of Ethereum, since it might cause a split that would really damage Ethereum. So it's not happening in 2018 since the developers have to do a lot of work to make this start working. Because Constantinople doesn't just have a mining reward reduction, and it has like a full suite of upgrades for Ethereum, including like a new virtual machine and such. So it's a total big upgrade, and maybe something in the code didn't work, obviously. And Afri Shodan also found that there was a 3-way fork caused on the Ropsten testnet between the clients of Geth, Parity, and another Ethereum client. So the different wallets actually forked into different blockchains. So obviously Constantinople is not ready to go. And there was other speculation that miners simply didn't upgrade their nodes on the Ropsten testnet, and so no one was mining blocks, and that explains the stall at 4.23 million. And then there was a developer begging, his name is Peter Szagli, something like that. He was asking or begging other developers to start up nodes running Constantinople to get the testnet moving. Maybe that worked eventually. So miners don't really appear keen on this, like they're not even helping. And then it caused a 3-way fork anyways once it was working, and it's not happening in 2018. But eventually, the community, the investors, and the miners are going to have to agree to some sort of fork. Because Ethereum has this thing in their code called the difficulty bomb, and it leads to the Ethereum ice age. So the difficulty bomb causes Ethereum's difficulty to start rising at a certain point after so many blocks, after some millions of blocks. After a fork, the difficulty starts rising to the point that there's no more blocks, and this is called the Ethereum ice age. The whole network would stop functioning. Miners would get no more money. no transactions would confirm anymore, and this is the Ethereum Ice Age, so that forces people to come to an agreement when the difficulty bomb is about to blow and make a fork of Ethereum. And that was designed so these forks would go through eventually. But it's going to have to be a community consensus agreement, and if it's not, it would cause a massive, real fork of Ethereum where there's different versions of Ethereum. It already kind of happened once with Ethereum Classic, but that was a different situation where some money was stolen and it was reversed. But then Ethereum Classic said, no, we're not reversing it. So it already happened once, and there's a major crypto spun off from Ethereum. It might happen again at this rate. There's a lot of divide in the community. I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's already broke, actually, because they put the difficulty bomb in there, so they got to fix that, at least. That's all we have for you today on this October 14th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast. Come back tomorrow for another great episode. Go to BitcoinNews.com 24/7 for the full spectrum of Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrency news. This is your host, Space Marine, signing out, going back to Neptune orbit.